Welcome to the Lawyer Life Podcast, where we seek to navigate our days with a little less stress and ideally a lot more fulfillment. In this season 3, we focus on small and big changes that will advance our well-being, personal and professional lives. On today's episode, we discuss well-being habits. We're asking ourselves, how can we build our practice to include well-being? I'm Mike Anderson.
And I'm Darlene Tonelli.
Do. Oh, we timed it really well.
Nice work.
It's so satisfying when we align with the intro song. I should say, hello, Darlene.
Hello. Happy Friday.
Let's get right to it.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, we started season 3 with a conversation about the foundation of fulfillment. Very heavy topic. I listened back and I think I was overwhelmed at times. That might have come through. But anyway, we left with a challenge to ourselves and to you, the listener. And we said that we would recap it. So do you want to start with our recap, Darlene?
Okay. So in the wellness world, I was hoping with the challenge that I would just get a bit of a baseline for me to understand where the improvement is going to come in the next 11 weeks of things that we're going to do on this podcast. So what we had said as a challenge was to just sit and think about, the 3 things that you admire most about people, the 3 things you value most, and the way that you want people to describe you, and to basically try to work backwards from that as a starting point. How's that as a summary?
Yeah, that's right. That's it.
Okay. Do you want to go first? How should we do it? Just share our initial...
man, this is very, I feel like I'm really opening up myself to this podcast, this public product here. But that's okay, because one of my number one thing that I put in the thing I admire most about people is authenticity. I love authentic people. It is something that draws me to people. It is something that I could improve on. And I love people who are just so authentically themselves and basically are just like put themselves on offer as a take it or leave it sort of thing. And I love that. The second thing I admire most about people is creativity. I think that's one of the things that makes me happy in the sort of work that we do, because with our tech and startup sort of clients, a ton of creativity there. And obviously on the music and entertainment side, I just love to be around folks who are creating things. It makes me happy, and I admire that in people. And then the third thing I really like, I don't know how to actually say this, but I love people who have an aura of like they're floating above what the thing we're currently talking about or the issue we're currently dealing with. Like there's some people I know who kind of always have a small little smile in the corner of their mouth, that like even though we're involved in something that could be stressful or at least complex or whatever, they always people who kind of see the forest from the trees and stay at a level slightly above what otherwise people normally are at. That is a skill and a trait that I really admire. So those are the 3 things. Sorry to be long-winded.
That's great.
Yes.
This is good.
Yeah. What about you?
Now it's in the airwaves. Now everyone knows. Everyone's going to be like, oh, I got to be authentic or I'm like, just kidding. Okay. So mine, not so dissimilar from yours, probably not surprising. The things that I was noting all week. So basically the way I approached this challenge was just all week I was aware, and I was thinking back about people in my past that I had admired. I kind of crossed paths with a bunch of people randomly this week that I admire. I saw some, in various situations, things I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I don't admire,
Yeah.
So it's both, but I focused on the positive in this exercise as instructed. And, I think the main thing that I really admire and what I would like us as a society to admire more is just courage to be different. I think it takes a lot of courage to step out of line. And I really value that. And I like to think of myself as the type of person who, when someone wants to step out of line and try something, I'd be like, yes, go, as opposed to, wow, have you thought of these 16 things that could go wrong? Like, I don't admire that approach or that response. So that was interesting to note. And very, that makes sense for me. The other thing that I really admire is people who just think of others first, whatever the situation is, meaning that if there's a discussion or even a negotiation, if someone's like, I can see this would be great for you. Let me try to figure out how we can like make this great for you and for us.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, putting other people first in like a self, a basing, is that a word? Not that kind of way, but just like a valuing other people
Yeah.
as much as you
Yep.
value yourself. And then the other thing sort of aligned with that is just this idea of treating all people the same, regardless of whether they can help you, whether they have status, whether they have a big title. Doesn't matter. End of the day, people are people. I like that. So those three things.
That's very good.
Yeah. And I think when you think about like everyone will be different, as we said on the last podcast, there's no right answer to this question. But once you think about that, you can kind of flag if you're in a work environment where if those are my values, for example, and I'm in a work environment that's very bureaucratic or very status oriented or very, hierarchical for reasons that have to do with seniority or whatever, I'm not going to love that. Right. So it's sort of
Mm-hmm.
like easier to figure out what it is about your current environment that is not giving you the best baseline by saying, oh, I see. Because this stuff is deep. I mean, I think these admire things. The thing for me when looking at the stuff is this isn't from this week. This is a lifelong thing
Yeah.
that I've admired.
Yeah.
Like if I look at all the people, like the books that I read when I was a little kid, or the people I admired, the music I listened to, the
Mm-hmm.
celebrities that I would want to chat with, like they share these things too.
Yep.
So anyway, that's this is good. Okay, let's move on because we have to still get to our today's topic.
I know.
So 3 things we value most.
Yeah. I'll be quick with mine, and frankly, I'm being a bit cute because I've included more than 3 things with a good summary of one. The first thing, 3 things I value most. The first thing I put loved ones, which include family, friends, and community, which is a lot, but hey, it's under one phrase. So number 1, loved ones. Number 2, I value my health most, and number 3, passions. Yeah, there you have it.
Passions. Okay.
Yeah.
One other member of the Inter Alia team is silently annoyed right now.
Well, he's annoyed by everything. But I guess that's also a bucket term for basically just the things that bring me joy.
Okay. Well, that's a good way to approach it, actually. Things that bring you joy. Mine are sort of tied to the admiring things, but in my own life now, 3 things that I value most: using your one life to do things with it that make things better, ideally for others. Getting outside your comfort zone. This is the thing. I value that. I'm not saying I enjoy it. I'm not saying that that's joyful, but I do think that it's sort of been the path to everything great, like that I have done.
Okay.
And then, I don't know, I guess the third thing I would say along the lines of family, just like commitment to family and friends.
Yeah.
Just like the idea that they're in the mix along with work. So yeah.
Okay.
Those are obvious. I think listeners of this podcast will not be surprised to hear our values. I think they'll be more excited to figure out what their own are.
Well, hopefully.
That's what you say these
days.
Hopefully
they'll be more excited about their own lives than ours. I think that is the case.
That is for sure true.
Yeah.
Good firm grip on the obvious.
And then the last thing we had, I think I phrased it improperly, that you'd want people to describe you as a way, because it kind of seems like then you can put up a front to get that result. But I think it's more just inherently, what sort of person do you want to be? And I have certain details which I will keep private, but effectively, my summary is the person I want to be is a helpful person. So, yes.
Okay. That's good. I always think that when I hear other people described, it's sort of an interesting thing in law because you can be very successful as like a shark type, right? And other people seem to admire that. And I have a sort of like an awareness that can be good in certain circumstances, but I wouldn't say that I admire it. I do really admire when people have had a long career and they have managed to sort of keep a solid reputation as someone who's fair and, straightforward and kind. that kind of stuff. I think so. I think I would be, if I look back on my life, I would want to be described as someone who like takes care of other people and
Yeah.
is kind and, also not just in my own thing. I don't know.
We're saying the same thing, Darlene.
I guess so.
Helpful and take care
Helpful.
of people. It's all in the same, which is probably why we're doing this podcast. Anyway,
That's
that's
probably why.
that's enough about us. We said we would be accountable and do the challenges that we put out there. So there you have everybody. Hopefully that's helpful, or at least includes us in the conversation you're having with yourself. Okay, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we will start the conversation today about creating habits that will build well-being into our own practices. We will be right back. Okay, and we are back with the topic of today. How can we integrate well-being into our practices? And on this subject, Darlene, we mentioned your article last week, but we'll go into it more in depth today. The article is entitled Next Stop on the Wellness Shift, by Rachel Shipper and yourself, featured in Lexpert magazine in the August 2019 issue. First of all, well done. Great little article.
Thanks. Yeah, it was definitely fun to write, but it was also it was interesting to co-write. So Rachel, who we're hoping to bring onto the podcast, she is a coach who has done wellness training for law firms, and so she and I realized we were like-minded and started thinking about, okay, what would be helpful for people to read that maybe aren't already thinking this way, and that's what led us to write something so basic, which is just try a few things. Because the other thing that we were kind of trying to get at is that within traditional law firms, this function of improving lawyer wellness is often centralized. So it's like the professional development team is in charge of having these great, bringing in a wellness coach and bringing in a mindfulness expert. And like they're doing those things. I would say that a lot of the big firms actually are offering these things. And what we have observed is just, okay, that's great. That's helpful. But how great would it be if each lawyer also saw themselves as like very, very key to the process? I think some lawyers do, and some lawyers aren't here at all. So we were trying to get people more engaged with the idea that there are a couple little things. This isn't one more thing to do, as we sort of stress a lot on this podcast. It's like additive. So I find that on the days that I do these little things, all my other time feels better, or I feel like I actually have more time. It's a weird effect.
Yeah,
that way.
It's an investment that pays dividends, as we mentioned in previous episodes. I did really like, there's a quote that really spoke to me, and I think that frames things well for this conversation from the article. And it's this: personal growth, particularly to people whose existing strategies are quote unquote working, is difficult. It can seem slow, futile, and self-indulgent. And so I think that's a good summary of what you were getting at as well, being that for lawyers who, hey, work's going well, my family's doing all right, I've seen my friends, things are seem to be working fine. I don't feel my best, but outwardly, things are as good as they're going to be. This is a tough profession, so on and so forth. It can be difficult to then decide to prioritize yourself, and it could seem self-indulgent, certainly, slow, futile. I took that quite well.
I think in particular, I think men and women struggle with this differently, but I'm really noticing just with some recent things that have happened in my own world that I feel like men in particular, when work is on the surface looking good, it's very hard to say, yeah, but I'm just not fulfilled by it, or, this isn't really for me, especially when I find that men are more likely to have like a significant like connection to work as like their whole identity is work.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of my female friends are not there where their whole identity is work. And it's obviously a broad generalization, doesn't apply to everybody. But I do think we can do better on supporting the idea that it's not selfish to do stuff for yourself. And it's not selfish to be like, yeah, you know what, this just doesn't really work for me, because at the end of the day, the idea is something will work. It doesn't have to be this. That's kind of how I look at things. What do you think about that point?
Yeah, I kind of want to have a sound effect where we put on like the gendered alert thing. It's like, woo! We're talking about it's and it's not to
Fraught, you
say that
mean?
all men are X or all women are Y or
Yes.
whatever, but I do think that there's something to be said about um, how coming up men that are practicing now normally, not everybody, but normally had a male role model that did focus on work as their sole sort of purpose. You know, that was much more
Mm.
common. So, and the message that growing up as a man that is in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and onward now is that that is the one of the main things that you can benchmark to be a successful family man or a successful man that doesn't have a family is if you're providing well, right? Like your job is to put the meal, whatever, make enough money so your family can eat and do whatever they want.
Hmm.
So I think that's one of the easiest markers of quote unquote success for men, and nowhere in that is, you know, a, room for a conversation about, but how are you doing? That's not prioritized certainly. So I think it's a good point, and obviously people have different experiences, but I would say that that's a common experience for sure.
Yeah, I don't think we've got that bit figured out yet. And I think you almost can't talk about this topic without just acknowledging the pressure of that. Because I think that a lot of the reason that people don't go here and don't want to open this door, even like a little bit, like not even crack it open,
Yeah.
is because there's this sense of like, put my head down, do the thing, and make sure that I'm fulfilling my responsibilities. And um, I think that there are sometimes consequences to that that you can't see, but yet, like socially, we're okay with still. Like, and that is changing. That is definitely changing. But I would say that as a like first generation, like I had a stay at home mom in my house for lots of my childhood, not the whole time, but it is a new thing to be, two professionals in one house, same education, same job prospects, um, you know, similar approach to things. How does that all work? Who's
Mm-hmm.
the provider? Like I think the roles are a little bit mixed up at the moment for especially people who are the first professional in their family or whatever. So I don't know. I feel like we should talk about it more openly than we do, and not just assume that now that women are having the same access to jobs, we're going to work the same way and the same values are going to hold. Like, that's not, I don't think, the right
Yeah.
answer. But I don't feel like it comes up that often because I think people are very nervous to say, like, oh, as a woman, like, I'm not sure about this whole provider thing. This is new. I haven't seen, I provide in other ways historically. And I don't know. I
There
see
is
people struggling with it without really naming the
Yeah,
struggle.
there is like an institutional hangover as well, in that you put a man and a woman in the same job and the man's going to make more. So that, and I'm obviously not
Hmm.
supporting that, but that's a reality. And so even in that situation, the man is still the lead quote unquote provider, which is not right. It still positions the
Right.
man that way, which comes along with that same of like, I have to keep plowing through. I can't stop. I can't slow down. Everything is contingent on me maintaining this level of success, or else my family suffers. So I think it's a good thing to note. And also, you know there there are skills I think that come along, or there's at least the nice thing. I don't know, I don't want to speak for women, but at all. But it seems like there is maybe a little bit more of a conversation about taking care of yourself, because then you can take care of others. That I hear more sent in the direction of women than in the direction of men. I often don't hear that
Totally.
sent over to on the man side, but it doesn't matter what your gender is. It's the same thing, and that's kind of what we're getting at today. Being
Hmm.
that if you're able to actually start to think about what you need to like sustainably feel well, everybody will benefit. Not only yourself, but those that you surround yourself with at work, at home, and otherwise.
Well, and I would just say that I think, and getting comfortable with the idea that you can explore this and it can be additive to what you're doing without like, blowing everything up, I think just needs to be said. Not for everybody, but for some people. Because I know that for some, both from all parts of the gender spectrum, people just, it can be scary to sort of open yourself to like, what if?
Yeah.
What if this isn't the best thing? Because then a whole bunch of scary decisions need to be made. So I would just say that this episode today is focused on just little things to up that baseline. Because if you're feeling miserable too, everything becomes a bit of a zero sum game and black and white. And this helps to bring you up to a better level from which to assess.
Yeah, and
well.
this should be informed by the stuff we talked about in this episode, our follow-up from last week from the challenge, which is if you start to look at the things you admire and the things you value and how you want to be for other people, that should really drive you to start to see that like the small changes that you should make to get to a place where you're able to better achieve those things and place your time in areas that you value and become the type of person that you want to be. So in the article you mention the Gallup ShareCare Wellbeing Index, which we'll put a link to in the show notes. And it includes 5 common elements that people need to thrive. And these are not surprising, but important to note. So physical, social, community, purpose, and financial. Great, something to go and take a look at. But then where you go to next is set your balance based on those 5 factors, and that will be different for everybody. So what is the thing you want more in your life of those? What is the thing you want less of, if anything? And how can you create a daily practice where you have rituals that create momentum in the direction you'd like to go, addressing the specific goals at different points in your day? A lot there, but really that's kind of the thrust of how we can all start to, as you said, build momentum toward well-being.
Yeah, and Rachel introduced me to this just because she is trained as a coach, and I would want to have professional opinions like from Catherine Chang and from Rachel, people who have this training. But I think what I find so interesting and compelling about this index is that purpose is on there as a piece, right? Like it is hard to feel really balanced and really like well if you don't feel you have a purpose here. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, like your purpose might be providing for your family. Your purpose might be, doing your, starting your business and, helping others. Like it doesn't matter what the purpose is, but it is a thing you need. Everyone needs that. And you need to feel like your day has value and means something. So I think that what I kind of have observed in talking to a lot of lawyers about career and people not outside law as well, is that if you don't feel valued in your job or your career, or you don't feel like, my dad always had a funny one. He would say, in a typical job, put your hand in a glass of water, take it out. That's the impact you leave when you leave your job. And I'm like, that's a terribly, I never want to feel like that. There's some truth to it. There's a little bit of truth to it. There's a grain there. But you also want to leave an impact, I think, in the modern view of jobs. So that's a piece of this that I always find compelling, and why I think this index, as opposed to just the standard emotional, spiritual, physical framework that I had been operating on before, like this adds to that.
The thing about purpose that I think is a bit deceiving, or at least it's easy to dismiss, because especially like the stereotype about millennials, of which I'm one. Oh, everybody needs purpose in their job, but and everybody just jumps to the conclusion that means being a superhero that makes worldwide institutional change, and obviously that was a great thing to do. But I listened to a conversation with Conan O'Brien, and he was talking about humor has a type of magic to it, and in that there could be a room with people feeling all, awkward, down, negative, really having a tough day. And there can be a person who then walks into that room and just with the ability to make them laugh and be humorous can pivot all of their days, weeks, perspectives. And there is an element of purpose to that. So whatever it is, like your purpose doesn't have to, you could be, you can work in a factory and not even love necessarily what the widget you're creating. But if your purpose is to help everybody else on the line or in the break room, get through the day more safely or enjoy it, that is important. It doesn't have to be a superhero world changing purpose.
Well, it's impact, right? Like I think what you're describing is someone's in a bad state, you bring them up to a good state. That's a micro interaction, but a bunch of those has a big impact.
Yes.
And I think it is valuable. And I always value the people in a company who take the minute or wherever to be like, hey, how are you doing? You look a bit glum. What's up? It takes 2 minutes, but it's just one of those things that you can materially impact someone's day, and humor for sure. I mean, especially with the news today. I mean, without a funny take on the news, I mean, man, life is
I don't even
dark.
want humor with news anymore. I just want humor. It's like even the news-based humor makes me I don't know what to do with it. I can't even anyway, that's a different topic. So setting your balance.
Small things that we can do.
And can I give you an example of a small thing I just started, largely based on trying to follow up on last week? So I did note that creativity is something important to me, and I've been watching a few episodes of this Netflix show that I mentioned to you yesterday, Darlene, called Abstract, and it's about designers and the impact of design. And every one of these like well-known, accomplished designers I noticed just like has a sketchbook and a pen and just like on the spot just starts drawing stuff. And I thought, I want to do that. So because I love creativity. So this week I bought a $4 large sketchbook and some sketching pens. And now on the train, when I go into the city, that's what I do. And that alone made me better once I got home and saw my family. And I'm going to continue to do it, and I'm really excited about it. Like the idea of having my sketch pad beside me, and when I finish a project now, I'll just like do a little bit of that. I'm really like, that's a small thing, costs $4, but now it's in my bag and it's with me all the time. And it's adding an element to my day that I didn't have before that aligns with what I admire in people and things I value. The creativity I admire in people, and the things I value. The third thing I listed is passions, and creativity and drawing would be included in that. So small example, but that's just what I'm up to.
Well, and it opens up the other part of your brain, right? Like there's a reason for free like life drawing or free drawing, whatever. And there's another sort of technique like that I have used at various times in my career. There's a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Do you know this book?
Nope.
Very famous book. For creators, a very, very famous book. It's about people who have an innate creativity, but they don't have a way to express it. So it would be like for a lawyer, for example, and I wasn't going to talk about this for today, but it is interesting that you bring this up. One of her tools that she recommends in The Artist's Way, the first one to tap into your creativity and get your creative brain flowing, is to wake up in the morning, and first thing you do these things called morning pages, and you just write for 3 pages.
Yeah,
have you heard of this technique?
Yeah.
It's a very interesting technique. I've done it at different periods when I was being more creative, and it definitely does unlock something. Like to me, what you're describing from the train is like that sketch. Probably, if you look at like your brain waves before you do it and your brain waves after, it probably dials down a whole bunch of noise.
Yeah, and the alternative is like being on my phone.
Yes,
which is
so noisy.
Yeah, negative, right? Yeah. So it's a small change that, like as we're saying, pays dividends. It makes me better, right? And that's an exciting thing. It's something I enjoy, but also makes me better. And I only got there because I actually did take stock, as you encourage in the article, and as we started last week. And thought critically about these things. What do I like? What do I admire? what do I want to be? And there we are. Then it translated to a notebook that I sketch stupid things into. So, there you go. Yeah.
I think that's great. I really think that's great. And like we always say, I mean, when you're dealing with people who are creative and trying to create things, doing any level of creativity and seeing how freaking hard it is not a bad thing to be doing. You know, creating's hard, building is hard. And I think having respect for the difficulty of the process, even if it's a sketch or, you know, trying to make a podcast or whatever, you know, it's helpful. And it does, I think it does expand your horizons too. So
Agreed. So with that, we are about to deliver this week's challenge. This week's challenge is answer the following questions. What is the one thing you want more in your life? What is one thing you want less of in your life? And what are 3 rituals that could create momentum in the direction you'd like to go? Addressing the goals that you set for yourself last week, and how can you implement those things during your day? Yeah?
sounds good. Sounds
Okay.
good. I'm so excited. It's fun going through the week and lining up the things that we're doing and noticing room for improvement. I mean, I have focused on this stuff a lot, and I still find extra spots where I can improve.
Oh,
When is the
goodness.
drinking water week? That's the only week that I'm really worried about. That's not going to work well for me. I'll try, but anyway.
We'll get there. We'll get there with you.
there.
Okay. And speaking of getting there, we're going to get there back. That doesn't work after this break. The Lawyer Life podcast is brought to you by Inter Alia Law. Inter Alia lawyers have big firm training, in-house experience, and a wide range of expertise in technology, media, and entertainment. Our advice is business-focused, speedy, and practical. To learn more, visit interalialaw.com. That's interalialaw.com. And we are back with our goods and gripes. Goods are things we want to promote and support, and gripes are things that annoy us. Darlene, do you have a good or a gripe?
I'm going to say good. I mean, we're in the middle of an election season here, and I think the good that I will focus on is just the opportunity to debate ideas and look at people's, I don't know, platforms and see people putting signs on their lawn and getting engaged with the process. I always am heartened by that, and I'm excited. October 21st here in Canada, so close. Following along.
That's
a
great.
good.
Yep.
How about you?
I have a good. I love plants. Growing plants. I have in front of me, we have this aloe vera plant, and off to the side, like a little one started to grow, and I have repotted it, and it's on my desk, and I see it slowly progressing, and it's just a very satisfying thing. Love plants.
Wow. Love plants.
Love plants.
You're very good at the one-word goods and grapes.
I have a one-word gripe, too. Do you want to hear it? Actually, it's 2 words, but it's one thing.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yep.
My gripe is fruit flies.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a real...
Get out of town. Fruit flies. Oh, my gosh.
Get out of here. What happened? How did they start?
I don't know. This is the thing that bothers me. How do they start? Mm-hmm. How do you for months have no fruit flies? And then I guess it's like, do we bring in bananas and then off we go? Like, how do they get here? And I have set every quote unquote home remedy fruit fly trap thing. They're just around. And then I know that a week will pass and somehow they'll all be gone. And there is no rhyme or reason, which maybe is one of the things that makes me frustrated by them. But go away. Stop it. You're not welcome.
Get out of town.
Find another place to be, fruit flies. You're not in this house.
Oh, man.
There it is.
Yeah, that is bad. I have raccoons. I guess that would be my gripe. I live on a ravine, and the raccoons are a staple feature of the ravine. And normally, this is kind of like a goody gripey because the raccoons have, like one day I opened my front door to take the kids to school, and there were 5 raccoons
Yeah.
standing outside my door, all looking in, 4 babies and 1 parent.
They're
And
canvassing for the Liberals, or?
they were canvassing, asking me for my thoughts on climate change. It was very, very unnerving to see so many. Of course, my kids thought it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's funny is if you've ever, we have these recycling bins beside our house, and normally they have like cement things holding them closed. And one day, for some reason, they weren't on there. And these are like my neighbor's bins and ours. Anyway, so I look out, I'm working late at night at like 10 o'clock. I'm like, what is all this noise from out here? Like, I keep hearing all this noise. And I look out the window, and there was a full-on party going on in these
Oh, yeah.
recycling bins.
Yeah.
All these raccoons are like, this is the best. Like, who left this party spot here for us? It was like watching Madagascar. Like, that movie? It's like a cartoon
Yeah.
about
Oh, I know
like,
it.
zoo
Yeah.
animals. Like
Yeah.
literally one would pop out, one would jump up. It was just something to watch. So that turned me in. They endeared themselves to me after the party night. But anyway.
I have so much respect for raccoons. But anyway. We'll
They're an
do that
interesting
in a
bunch
different
of
episode.
characters.
They learn, they teach each other stuff. The city of Toronto makes a impenetrable green bin, and within a week they like figure out how to open it. I love it.
It's so funny.
They are like the people that you like that challenge the status quo. Raccoons.
They really do challenge the status quo.
We are really getting off the rails on this
Maybe
raccoon.
you can edit this bit out.
No, it's all staying in.
Oh
I
my
love
God.
authenticity, don't forget.
I know.
For this, tune in as we grow our podcast network to the Raccoon Podcast, where we analyze raccoons
Oh man.
and how they
like to party.
and
I'm
become
regretting my
well in
gripe.
our community.
Can I gripe about my own gripe and how it's gone off the rails? Anyway, well, it was nice to chat with you. I will look forward to this week's challenge, and we'll be back to tell the tales of what happened.
Tell the tales, as we love to do. Okay, This was great. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
That's it for this week's episode of LLP. Thanks to Inter Alia Law for presenting the podcast, and to Nick Fowler for composing and performing our music. See our show notes for his website. Don't forget, we love feedback. Please comment in the review section, or subscribe, or like. We'd appreciate it greatly. That's it. Talk soon.